When the term assault rifle comes up, the general population will immediately begin to think of mass shootings, military firepower, and a weapon system that should not be used by civilians. However, if a bit more research is done on the subject, one will find that the caliber most widely used in homicides, the caliber whose kinetic energy pales in comparison to that of an assault rifle's caliber, and the caliber whose projectile is considerably bigger than that of an assault rifle, actually belongs to the legendary 9mm. Having said this, it is not the 9mm that is consistently mentioned on television, nor is it in danger of being terminated via legislation. That is because the 9mm is primarily a handgun caliber, whose popularity is on par with that of the rifle cartridge fired by the notorious AR-15, the 5.56 caliber. So when the term AR-15 is brought up, the most often cited example of an assault rifle, the question that typically follows is, should it be banned? The reasons for banning anything almost always centers on general population safety. But the question looms, will banning assault rifles make the population safer, or will it give it a false sense of being safer? Once proper analysis is done and research is completed, the only conclusion that can be reasonably drawn is that banning assault rifles will not significantly make the general population safer. The question that needs to be asked is where this idea came from, that singling out a single weapon system would make the civilian populace significantly safer. The simplest answer is the media. The media alone has had the greatest impact in creating the narrative that so called assault rifles are the greatest threat to public safety. This is done via consistent coverage of crimes committed by assault rifles and no coverage at all of crimes committed by the most common firearm used in murders, that of the 9mm handgun. It is this constant media coverage that gets the attention of the public, who in turn call upon the only body that can take the most decisive action against this perceived threat. That body is government representatives, who in turn create legislation they believe will address this problem. Government representatives will almost always act on the fears of their constituency, even if that fear is not grounded in reality. The reason for this is twofold. In order to maintain their position as an elected official, it is their job to enact the will of the people. And lastly, if their own fears are also influenced by what they see, in this case, the same media attention their constituency sees, then acting upon a popular idea is a worthwhile endeavor. It is often said that a politician will never let a good crisis go to waste, and there is no bigger crisis than a mass shooting which a politician can point to and believe that they can correctly identify the root of the problem and thereby create a solution. The issue with using legislation to address this perceived problem is that it will not achieve the intended result. One cannot legislate the evil out of humanity no more than one can enact legislation that will end drunk driving, deaths. And although drunk driving is in fact a privilege and not a right, diminishing an actual right by outlawing a firearm which is used in just a fraction of firearm deaths will never solve a problem. It is this reason alone that enacting any type of assault rifle ban will never create a significant change in deaths by firearm. It will only erode a right granted by the founding fathers. Outlawing a rifle like an AR 15 will not make the population more safe. The man or woman behind such a firearm will determine that by way of their actions. The best way to address a problem is to identify whether there is a problem in the first place. This is done by analyzing data, which in turn can be used to educate a public ignorant to firearms. Educating the public on firearm statistics, firearms in use in defense, firearms in use in murders, and all other aspects of firearms will lead to a better informed public. It is with this information that better solutions can be found. Understanding the role of firearms and the role they play in our society is a good start because without firearms, the founding of the United States of America may not have happened. In closing, the next time the topic of so-called assault rifle ban, like the AR-15, come up, please remember that it is not this firearm responsible for the most firearm deaths in the U.S., whether they were caused via criminal act or in the defense of one's person or property.